Update. I, 35 mem, was incarcerated and lost touch with 33F. It's been over 10 years. Would it be wrong to contact her now? Original post. When I was a university student, I fell in love with Daria, not her real name obviously. She was the little sister of my best friend, so I considered her off limits. But my crush on her persisted and grew. She's one of those beautiful, brilliant people who is alive and breathing to make the world a better place. How could I not be drawn to that? One day, she told me she had feelings for me. And to my relief, my best friend didn't have a problem with me dating his sister either. So, for 2 wonderful years, Daria was my girlfriend. I should have asked her to marry me. I don't know why I didn't. I suppose I thought I had all the time in the world. We were young, and there was no need to rush things. We lived in a country that isn't exactly democratic, and we were political activists. I ended up getting arrested and going to prison for 9 years. Please don't think I'm some kind of monster for this. I don't want to go into detail in case it makes me identifiable somehow. But we didn't hurt anyone or do anything immoral. What we did is not even illegal in the country where I currently live, and our beliefs were far from extremist. I haven't seen or spoken to Daria since the day I got arrested. My best friend died shortly after, and Daria left the country, partly due to the possibility that she'd be arrested too. There wasn't any way for her to contact me while I was in prison, though apparently she contacted my dad a few times in the beginning. Things got even worse in our country while I was incarcerated, so my dad and I emigrated when I was released. We've been living in Western Europe ever since, and life is pretty okay. I live with my dad, and I have a steady, if shitty, job. Months ago, I found Daria online. She lives in a neighboring country, 7 hours away by rail. She doesn't use social media too much, but from what I've seen, there's no evidence of a partner or kids. And even if she's married, I'd be content just to be her friend, as I was for the first years we knew each other. Part of me desperately wants to reach out to her, and my dad has been encouraging me to do so, but I feel like it'd be too selfish. The circumstances of her brother's death were very traumatic for her, and I'm afraid that I'm just a living reminder of all the bad things that happened to us. And if she does have a partner, would my contacting her offend him and trouble their relationship? I don't want to cause her any more sadness. Time stood still for me while I was in prison. But I know it didn't for her or anyone else. She's done so well for herself. She's built a whole life, and I don't want to derail that life just because I feel entitled to a place in it. She might not even remember me at all. And even if she did invite me back into her life, I'd be nothing but a burden now, owing to my wrecked mental health. We've been apart twice as long as I knew her. Have I even the right to miss her as much as I do? For now, I've contented myself with Googling her name every so often and seeing that she's okay. It just hurts a lot. And I don't know how to make it not hurt. I still love her with everything I have. I probably always will. Should I reach out to her, or leave her alone? If I do contact her, what should I even say? Now for the updates. Update 1. The short version is that I was wondering whether I should try to contact my former girlfriend after I went to prison for a long time. The consensus was that I should, and people gave very good advice on how to do that. First, I want to say thank you to everyone who offered advice or kind words. I had spent so long feeling ashamed about my situation, and expecting most people to react very negatively if they knew. I had barely discussed it with anyone before, except my dad, and people whose job it is to help me, lawyers, therapists, etc., and I was very surprised to be met with so much compassion from a bunch of complete strangers. Thank you, truly. Several people asked for an update, and that's the least I can do in return. I sent Daria a message the evening after I made my post. It was something like, I don't mean to intrude, but I wanted to say hello and thought I would give you my new contact information, in case you ever felt like getting in touch. If not, that's completely fine too. I left her my mobile number and email address, wished her well, and that was that. I knew it might be a while before she responded, if she responded at all. So I tried to put it out of my mind. Early Monday morning my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number from the country where Daria lives. Who else would ever be calling me from there? I panicked a little bit, but I managed to answer in time. She asked a few times if it was really me, and I couldn't tell if she was laughing or crying. At first, she called me by the very affectionate version of my name she used to. But then she quickly apologized and corrected herself, which broke my heart a little bit. It was an awkward phone call, but not in a bad way. I was extremely nervous, and it seemed like she was too. But happy also. Some of you mentioned that Daria would want to know that I was safe. And this was more true than I could have guessed. because unrest in my country increased a lot during the last year I was in prison. She was afraid that they would decide to quietly kill me, rather than let me go. There are documented cases of other prisoners like me, having met very suspicious ends in the months before my release, so it wasn't a totally unreasonable worry. She also said she repeatedly tried to send me parcels of supplies and put money on my commissary account, but her attempts were rejected without explanation. After my sentencing, I was not allowed to receive correspondence or to have a commissary account at all, because of the classification of my crimes, so she was forced to give up. She told me this as an apology, as if I would have been disappointed with her for not helping me more. I had no idea she had done any of that. I do know that it was not a safe thing for her to do, and I feel terrible that she put herself at risk trying to make me a little more comfortable. She didn't seem to want to talk about what happened any more than that, and so we didn't. We changed the subject to more light-hearted things. Our jobs, the cities where we live, how my dad is adapting to a new country, etc. When she arrived at work and had to end the phone call, she asked if I wanted to continue talking through a messaging app. Obviously I said yes, and downloaded it immediately. We sent messages throughout the day, and she even interrupted her commute home to send me a picture of a restaurant modeled after one of my favorite books, just because she thought I would like it. She told me that she thought of me every time she saw it. But unfortunately the restaurant itself was not so good. I was afraid she wouldn't remember me. But she even remembers the things I like to read. She remembers a lot of little things, even stuff I forgot. We have been sending messages back and forth ever since, and talking on the phone after I finish work at night, until she gets too sleepy. Sometimes it feels like I'm 24, and she's texting me from a few blocks away, as if the next thing she might ask is what's for dinner. Other times it seems like we're trying to will dead versions of ourselves back to life, in order to avoid acknowledging what we've lost. She seems a lot more timid than she used to, more passive, which I suppose makes sense. Sometimes I worry about how much I've changed, and that maybe she won't find anything left in me that's worthy of her. But if I could express in words what it feels like to hear her laugh, I could explain that there's also a lot that we know very well. She hasn't lost her kindness, or her warmth, or her empathy. She still cares about me, and I still care about her. I know that rebuilding a friendship after all that's happened will take lots of patience, and I have plenty to spare. I'm just happy to have the chance to get to know her again. This morning, Daria asked if I want to have a video call sometime this weekend. I agreed. But I'm ashamed to admit that as much as I want to see her, I'm very nervous. I look so different than she would remember. My jaw is messed up, and I have the teeth of a hockey player. Fortunately, I will qualify for healthcare insurance soon, and be able to have it fixed. I lost weight that I haven't put back on, and I see an old man in the mirror. I'm also worried that I will get very emotional when I see her, and embarrass myself that way. I don't really cry in front of people. I'm not used to it, and this doesn't seem like a good occasion to start. Aside from not wanting to appear pitiful, I don't want her to feel forced to comfort me. If anyone has some advice on how to handle this, it would be much appreciated. Overall, this week could not have gone better, and I am extremely grateful to everyone who gave me the little push of courage I needed to send her that message. 1,000 times thank you. Edit. Just to clarify, she doesn't have a husband or kids. As I said in my first post, I only considered contacting her because there was no evidence of a partner on her social media. But I understand that my first post wasn't visible for a while, so I can see why that may not have been obvious. Sorry for the confusion. Update 2. I've had a lot of people ask for an update, so here it is. The last 2 months have gone by very fast. I told Daria that I was nervous about the video call, and she insisted on having it right away so that I could get it over with and stop worrying. Seeing her made everything feel real in a way it hadn't before. She still looks like herself, or even more beautiful. Different only in the sense that she is fully an adult now. The place she lives is very different from our home country, with a distinct culture to which she has assimilated. That she had time to adapt and feel completely at home in this place broke the illusion that no time had passed. In hindsight, that was probably the real reason I had been so nervous, because I could no longer occasionally forget myself and pretend that nothing had changed. The hardest part was not being able to reach through the screen and put my arms around her. Sitting there and watching someone you love cry from a distance is not easy. I barely noticed that I was crying too. She didn't seem surprised at my appearance, but she did eventually look me over and ask if the food was shit where I lived. I explained about my jaw, and that I'm getting it fixed. Less dental work is required than I thought, but I need a surgery. Her response was to ask for my address and order groceries to be delivered, including a lot of soft snacks that are easy to eat, and these meal substitution drinks that are actually tasty. She sent them every week since, even though I tell her it's not necessary. When I wanted to pay her back, she laughed at me and said she owed me a lot of food because I had kept her from starving to death in university. I loved being able to cook for her, and I suppose it makes her just as happy to feed me now. We talk every day and have made video calls a regular habit. It does me so much good just to see her face, and the awkwardness is mostly gone now. It's easy to talk to her. Last night she brought her computer into the kitchen and talked to me while doing the washing up. It's amazing how mundane things like that can make me feel normal, and at home, in ways I forgot I could. I never thought I'd be that stupidly happy to see someone washing coffee cups. I'm beginning to think that the idea of home as a physical place is a misconception. She likes to send photos, to show me where she lives, what her life is like now. She was curious about how things are the same or different here. I didn't want to admit that I don't have much of a life to share back. Going places just didn't seem worth the effort. She is, though. At first it was very small things. She would send a picture of a pastry she'd bought at a cafe, saying that she thinks her city has better pastries than mine. I would go out and get one, so I could send her a photo too. Then it was beer, which city has better parks, interesting architecture, a department store, and so on. I figured out quickly that she was trying to coax me into going out more, but I played along to make her happy. I've seen more of my city in the past month than the entire time I've lived here before. I've been to the art museum, and finally joined my colleagues for a beer. Usually, I go places for short durations at the less crowded times, but I'm still going, which is something. Daria used to be very sociable, so I thought that whatever happened, at least she wouldn't be lonely. I was wrong. There is a lot she could never tell her friends, because they can't relate. They would feel sorry for her, and cease to be equals, she says. Our experiences are different, but we are more able to understand each other than other people could. And despite her own burden, she has quietly picked up half the weight from my shoulders without ever being asked to. I am in awe of her, simply for being the kind of person who would. For Women's Day, I sent her some orchids, and she was very happy that I remembered her favorite flower. The things I can do to make her smile are so small, and she deserves so much more than I know how to give her. But I would do anything for this woman, and I am learning. There are protests happening where she is, with riot police and tear gas. Whenever this happens, she feels nervous and has difficulty sleeping. Now, at least, I can stay on the phone with her at night, so she's not alone. Aside from the anxiety, there is also a sense of nostalgia. She talks about when that was us, making noise in the street. I'm glad she has good memories too, and doesn't have to be alone with them anymore. Finally, the reason I am updating now, she is coming to visit. We were talking last night, and I mentioned that a church near me has special windows designed by an artist she loves, and I was thinking about going to see them eventually. She said it would be unfair of me to go without her, so I invited her to come with me. And then somehow it turned from vague future plans to being scheduled for next Saturday. She was going to come for the day, but I told her it was silly to travel so far to stay for such a short time, and suggested she stay the entire weekend. So she will be here from Friday until Sunday. I haven't really had time to be nervous yet, but I'm sure I will. Thank you again to everyone who has given advice or encouragement, it is very much appreciated. Story 2. My adult daughter is in a financial train wreck and is coming to me again for help. Advice, please. Original post: my daughter, 35, used to live a frugal lifestyle, but became an emotional spender in her mid-20s, and it's out of control. She also is the worst housekeeper imaginable, which leads to buying too much of things that can't be found, and having to buy new things because necessities and frivolities get ruined. Her house is a literal pigpen of junk and garbage and crap. She has 3 cats and cleans the litter boxes about once per month. She and her first husband of 8 years divorced when he came out. They have 2 young children. He has a good job, and when they were together, they were probably bringing in $200K. We live in an area where the COL is reasonable. He's likely making about $180K now, and pays child support. Within 2 years of the divorce, she was remarried. She and husband number 2 bought a house that they simply would not be able to afford, unless the sun and moon and stars aligned daily. It was a 6-bedroom house, over 3,300 finished square feet. Their combined income was in the neighborhood of $125K, excluding child support. The house was $325K, and to afford it, her husband had to work at least 10 hours of overtime every week. Next thing I know, they've bought a new SUV, and then a few months later, he's sporting a brand new gigantic pickup. Then they're taking a trip to Paris for the holidays. I didn't know how much they were making, but she's a smart girl, and I assumed they were spending within their means. About 18 months into the marriage, she asked for a divorce, and that's when everything came out. They were in debt about 80K. He'd taken a new job that didn't offer overtime and was at a lesser salary, so there was no way they could pay for the house. Throughout the mess of getting the divorce, her sisters, brothers and I gave her in excess of 5K for emergency items like lawyer, apartment deposit, moving expenses, utility bills, etc. At that point, she came to me for help. With the sale of the house, she would be able to pay off some of her debt, but was left with about 39K in credit card debt. I considered paying about 28K for her and setting up a repayment plan, while also setting up plans for her to get her own debts under control. I expressed clearly this would require a complete change in her spending habits, as she would have to live for 5 years like she had no money, but then everything would be paid off and she'd be all good. She was focused only on my paying off a bunch of her debt, and I could see that. As we discussed ways to cut her expenses, she was brushing off every reasonable suggestion such as, no cable streaming services, they have internet and YouTube, no weekly meals out, grocery shop at Walmart and Aldi, not Target, no daily trips to Target just because. During this time, she went a little nuts before the divorce was finalized, and 2 days after we met, she was laid off when her position was terminated. 3 days later we got together for her birthday, and her 9-year-old daughter was wearing a $200 pair of new cowboy boots that she'd gotten 2 days before when she and her mom went to see some big-name country singer in concert out of town. At that point, I noped myself right out of helping her. She was paying me back for a few thousand in loans, and I just stopped expecting those payments, but planned to resume them when her situation improved. She was out of work for about 3 months, and finally landed a job, making 66% of her former salary, about $50K. I haven't asked her to resume her loan payments. She called the other day because when she got her new SUV, it was an adjustable loan. The new rate is coming up, and her payment is going to more than double, to over $800 a month. She can't afford that, and she has no credit to go get a car on her own. She wants my help with that. In the last 2 weeks, she had professional family portraits taken, and got a new tattoo, piercing, and a full head hair color. My credit score is 830. My only debt is my house payment, which is stupid low. I live an extremely frugal life mostly. I've got a great savings account, excellent retirement savings, and I still work and make enough to live better than I do. I am money conscientious. I do some fun things with my money, and I have earned that right. If I don't help her, she will have the car repossessed. She has to have a car or everything spirals. Also, she is a terrible driver, and has been in as many as 6 at-fault wrecks in the last 8 years. I am at a loss of how to help her because I know how she is. Someone has been there to bail her out in the last 2 years, which I believe has just made her lazy and complacent and blind to her situation. She is coming over today now, to talk about her finances. I insisted she bring everything, including all of her bills, bank account info, salary info, 401k, and other retirement info, child support. She said she'd be willing to let me help her set up a budget and plan. I've heard that before. So please, can anyone offer me any advice on how to proceed? I want to help her, but I do not want to enable her. I can't make her change, and I'm not going to try. I don't know what to do. Help, please. Now for the update. 7 months ago, I posted about my adult daughter, who appeared to be actively working to ruin her life financially, and was always asking for money from me, her siblings, and probably her friends. I wanted to find a way to help her. I got a lot of don't, and some other good advice, and some interesting advice. Here's how it all played out. She brought with her all of her debts and income papers. She was making enough money to pay her bills, including the new amount that would come due each month for her car. The problem was how and where she was spending her money. The biggest culprit was meals out. The amount was staggeringly high. Nearly 1/4 of her monthly income for her and her 2 kids, that she has 1 week on 1 week off in shared custody. After reviewing all of that, I offered a few suggestions on how to immediately cut down on spending. I was met with pushback, not strong, but she wasn't really buying into my suggestions. So I asked her what she wanted, and she said, "I want to be able to pay my bills and keep my car." I said, "Okay, stop eating out. There's $1,200 a month after you buy groceries. That's enough to pay your car and start paying off your credit cards without borrowing any money from anyone." She got angry. So I said, I'll work up a plan for you and email it over later. She left, obviously unhappy. That night, I worked out an aggressive repayment plan that would pay off her credit card debt in 2 years, and still allowed for meals out a couple times a month at kids eat free places, and a family entertainment night at some place inexpensive, and even better if coupons were involved. The plan showed how to pay off the highest interest rates first, while still paying more than the monthly minimum on the other cards, and laid out how the debt would be reduced each month. I chose a 2-year repayment plan because her kids will soon be in junior high, and this would give her the income for the extra expenses that come as a result. She could have moved it to a 3-year plan, and really the only change she had to make was cut Netflix, cut the Apple Watch, and stop eating out. All the savings would go directly towards fixed expenses and debt, and if she didn't spend as much as budgeted for food, she could put it into savings. Result: silence. She cut contact with me and her sisters. She'd done this before, so we all just said fine and didn't try to work it out. Then 3 months later, I got a Venmo payment towards her loans. Her sister said she got one the same day. The payments have come each month since. A few weeks after the first one, we all saw on SM that she had taken a part-time job. Then, in the last several weeks, she started sending texts. She most recently mentioned that her credit score has gone up over 200 points this year, and she's working her tail off to pay off bills. It was never my intent to give her more money or co-sign any loans. Her silence made that easier. I am not sure if someone else loaned her the money or got her a consolidation loan. It appears she has taken financial responsibility for herself and her kids and is making good progress.